Hello, I'm James Goulding, editor of Technology Reseller magazine, and I'm here today with Paul Byrne, Managing Director of Nimans. He was appointed Managing Director in February, but he's worked at the company, as many of you will know, for many years. And it's great to have him here today to talk about growth areas at the company and what we can look forward to in 2024. Paul, welcome. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here, have a chance to talk with you.
So you have been at Nimans for many years, but were promoted to Managing Director in the summer?
Right at the beginning of the year. So after the acquisition by Midwich, which was in February 2022, then myself and the two other directors took overall responsibility for the business in that period after acquisition. And then in January 2023, I got appointed as Managing Director at that point to take us forward.
And how has your first 6 months or so been?
It's a change. I think the biggest change, I think, is just obviously overall responsibility for the business brings its new areas that I hadn't been involved in before. Alongside obviously being part of a PLC, which is different to being part of a private company that we've been for many years. So there's different responsibilities, there's different things that need reporting, different things to look at. So it's been really interesting, really getting involved in a lot of those things, and also trying to manage our transition from what we were into what we want to be in the next sort of 5-10 years. That's a journey for us, which we're on at the moment.
And so how would you describe Nimans' performance in 2023?
We've been really pleased how 2023 has gone. One of our core markets is the headset market, and the headset market's had a tougher year after sort of 3 years of continuous pretty large growth in the headset market since COVID. Then it settled this year, and I think that's a lot to do with people refreshing out their headsets during that period. So the diversity that we have in the business, so in our retail sectors, our security sectors, has really covered up for that and allowed us to still grow. It's one of the advantages of having a diverse distributor, but also the other side of that is not every market's up at the same time. Wouldn't that be fantastic? If they're all up at the same time, we'd be doing brilliantly. But it does give us that security when a particular part of the market is down.
And which parts of the sort of security business have done very well, and what other growth areas were there in 23?
Well, we moved into security about 4 years ago and took a team on to actually take us into that marketplace, and that was a direct result of feedback from our resellers. That when we spoke to our resellers and asked them what markets would you like to see Nimans in, then security came back as overwhelmingly the one that they wanted us to be in. So we moved into security at that point, recruited in a very good team, and they continue to do really well as we put security into some of our more traditional UC resellers, as well as becoming established in that space. So that's been really good for us. The video market's been great this year, so that continues to grow, because it doesn't matter if people are in the office or not in the office, then that is a growing market for us, but really an evolving marketplace, especially into the types of technologies that people put into the rooms, which rooms they put them in, as well as home working as well. So that's been a strong area for us. And as long as they're going well for us, then our natural networking and infrastructure areas all benefit from that. So probably the only area that hasn't grown for us this year is probably the headset area. The rest has gone really well.
And what's driving growth for you at the moment?
What's driving growth for us is probably the evolution of the workspace. If you take our office alone, so during lockdown we stripped out our whole office and put new everything into every room to try and incorporate the workforce that we saw our team being in the future. So a hybrid workforce that is in the office some of the time, at home some of the time. And that technology is what's driving a lot of the changes that are going well for us this year. So that's been really positive for us.
And are there areas where you think your resellers should be doing more to exploit the opportunities that might exist?
Cloud connectivity is obviously a growth area. I mean, we'll be approaching something like 20,000 seats now across all the platforms that we provide. So our Nimans connectivity area, which is not just the connectivity into cloud telephony, it's also got mobile in there, it's got data connectivity in there, is a really positive area for our resellers, especially as we provide billing services so that you can do bureau billing, and that allows smaller resellers as well as large resellers to get into that area. So that's probably the growth area for us. Also, now that we have a security area, an AV area, a UC area, then actually we can help resellers in each of those spaces explore the other spaces. You know, it's a very converging marketplace with not the traditional partners staying in their traditional lanes anymore. Everyone's crossing over. So therefore, a distributor that allows them to cross over is, we consider to be a real strength of ours.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has the acquisition by Midwich affected Nimans, and how do you see that sort of relationship developing? It's
been a really interesting 18 months. Probably initially, the change from a privately owned company into a PLC is, being part of a PLC is a change. But really importantly, being part of a much bigger family now. So, you know, we go from a distributor, you know, 100 million plus to a billion plus. And that changes just the whole emphasis of the relationship with, for example, our key suppliers. But also for our customers, we now have a global presence, which allows us to do multi-country rollouts, especially for the big projects. That's been really positive. But the biggest key for us has to be to retain who we are. You know, Nimans has been Nimans for lots of years, and we still are. You know, we have a very large percentage of our workforce who've worked for us 10, 15, 20 years plus. So it's that good link between what our history was and what our future wants to be. So it's been really interesting. Also, new suppliers that have become available to us, the AV space. So we've taken in some of those suppliers and can then put those suppliers to our customers. So it opens up new supplier relationships, new customer relationships. It's all about doing it at the right speed, really, because you can't launch 1,000 things at the same time, otherwise everyone just gets confused, both staff and customers. And the fortunate position we're in is we don't have to do it all overnight. You know, we're evolving the business into where we want to go in the next 5 and 10 years.
And does it work the other way? Do Midwich take on more UC solutions? And how does that work with Nimans? Who has the responsibility for the delivery? And
so they do. They've looked at some of our UC brands as well to put into their space. Yeah, and it does take some time to make sure that your strategy's right on that. Fortunately, as Midwich is a company that's acquired plenty of companies, and they're very experienced at that, so therefore we were able to navigate our way through that quite easily. Speaking to the suppliers especially, so they understood what our strategies were in both businesses, so that we weren't overlapping, and importantly, not kicking each other as we went along. And from our partners' point of view, especially, you know, in our key customers, that they were clear on what we were doing and how we were doing it. So we were lucky that they've got lots of experience of that, so we were guided by their experience.
Yeah, and your partners have welcomed the...
In the main, yeah, I mean, God, that sounds bad. I don't mean in the main. I mean, they needed clarity at the beginning. Some of them are who appeared in both areas. What's the strategy? You know, because everyone always wants 1 + 1 to equal 2. And so do we. So, but everyone also gets nervous that sometimes it doesn't. So in the first 6 months, there had to be some clarity of that. But in 2023, that's gone really well.
And what are your goals and priorities for next year?
Goals for 2024 are really the key areas where we see growth coming. As I said, having a diverse distributor that touches multiple sectors has its strengths and its weaknesses. So if you're a distributor in a single growth area and that's growing really well, then you get that exponential growth. In a distributor like ours, where we have multiple sectors that we're in, it's very rare that every sector's up at the same time. And if you're not careful, that can create flat growth over a number of years. So for us, it's taking advantage of the key things that sit in front of us. So for example, Mitel buying Unify. So Mitel buying Unify, as a Unify distributor we were, and also we've just signed up as to be a Mitel distributor as well, then bringing those two powerhouses together is a fantastic opportunity for us. And that's where our legacy knowledge and what we're doing as a business really starts to come to the fore. So that's really exciting for us. The video space. So, you know, with the suppliers that we already had, I mean, for example, Yearlink's one of our key suppliers, you know, very strong brand in that video space, continually growing, as well as what they do in the SIP space for us as well. So they're going to be strong. Security, wow, what could that be? That, you know, we're the new entrants into that marketplace, and that's really exciting, because actually in the UC space, you know, we tend to be a distributor that everyone comes after, because we've got big chunks of the marketplace. So it's quite good to go into a marketplace where we haven't got that market share, and we can go out there and tell people what we do and get them excited by us. So that's a growth area for us as well.
That's physical security rather than
Yes,
cyber.
That's right. Yeah, that's physical security. So that's with brands like like Hanwha, Pelco, it is, we've got a great relationship with Hanwha and where they're going as a business in the UK, some really exciting numbers with them. So, that's got a really interesting feel to it because that's a new area for us that we can really see exponential growth in.
Are there other areas that your resellers are asking you to move into that you can talk about? Well,
we're in so many areas now. You've also got to be careful you don't become a master of none in terms of what's there. So we feel as though, if we look at, for example, in its most basic form, what sits on the network. So, what different endpoints can be driven from what sits on that network. Then, from a security point of view, a Teams point of view, a video point of view, then, that covers most of the core markets where we see the growth for the next few years. We'll then review it at that point and see where it takes us. At the moment, what we're getting from our partners is that they want to grow with the things we've got. And I think that's key with it. You don't want to go too wild.
And what vendors are you backing to do very well in 2024 and why?
I think, as I say, I think Mitel and Unify, I think, will be a really interesting one. If you look at the scale that now gives Mitel, in terms of the number of deployed seats they've got globally, and especially in a marketplace like that where you're seeing a lot of buying going on, aren't you? And it's starting to close down into some small, a smaller number of large players. Then Mitel's acquisition of Unify really sort of solidifies them as the one that, one of the big ones that's going to remain in there. So I think that's going to be really exciting. Yealink is a growing brand for us and always has been. They bring out really good products. They're really well priced in that space, so that's got growth. And also, I'm sort of calling for and I think our headset vendors will bounce back next year. So I think the likes of Jabra and EPOS and JPL and also emerging brands like Yealink in that space as well. The headset market's a market that always bounces. So the fact that it's had a tougher year doesn't mean that is a reset point for that market. It will come back. So we're viewing that to be quite exciting next year. Sometimes the great thing about a market going down is that your year-on-year numbers are great for the year after. So, we'll boost back up in there.
Will that be through sort of product innovation or replacement cycle? Or
I think it's a lot to do with replacement cycle. And also, the headset vendors sometimes get tied to the PC market as well, and that's had a tougher year. So therefore, that will bounce back. That's always refreshing, isn't it? It depends on how fast how often you replace your laptop and how often you replace your headset. I also think the workplace market is evolving as people decide on new strategies to go back to the office. We're starting to see it more and more, aren't we? That companies that were going to work in a hybrid way are now getting drawn back into the office. We're changing ours next year. As people start to recognize that there are technology abilities to working there, but there's also cultural important things about people spending time together, and that is drawing people back into the office.
Yes, I've read quite a lot recently about how we should drop the word hybrid and just say working, but within that working you encompass a variety of different styles.
I get the point. I think realistically you're right, what word you put to it, because businesses have different cultural and working needs. So if you look at our own business, so from our business's point of view, our activity levels are as high when people are at home as they are in the office. So if you looked at it purely in that way, then why would we bring people back into the office more and more? Well, after a few years of doing it, you start to spot a cultural change, in people knowing each other, spending time with each other, people's relationships with each other. And we've made a decision that if you were to extrapolate that 5 years forward, then if we continued as we are now, then we wouldn't culturally be the business we want to be. So it's not an activity-based reason that we're bringing people back in. It's that actually we see that Nimans has always been a very personal business. The staff's relationships with each other has been critical. It was something Julian was always passionate about, the staff. So therefore we've made that decision. And I think that's a lot of businesses. They're not looking at it from a pure activity point of view or numbers on a spreadsheet point of view. They're looking at the culture of what they want to create. And that creates technology, because from that point, that mix between the technology I need at home, there, as we were talking earlier on, 1 screen, 2 screens, because everyone still needs that home environment, but the change of the office environment creates technology needs.
I think, am I right in saying that this year you produced your first sustainability sort of strategy?
That's actually been a really interesting part of the group coming on board with us, actually making us rethink what our sustainability strategy is. And being part of the PLC has really driven us to really take a hard look at that. So that drove the One Plan solution that we've come up with this year, which is an important part of just pulling together. It's interesting when you look at your own sustainability, there's actually lots of things you're doing. You just need to pull them together into an actual strategy. So it's not that we suddenly started doing that. We've been doing all of those sustainability pieces for ages, whether it was looking at our packaging or working with our supply chain, but we didn't pull it together into an overall strategy and give it a goal. And that's what we've done this year. We've turned it into a strategy and given it a goal of what we want to achieve. So we've put that under a strategy called Nimans One Plan, which is what we're now going to use to take forward into the future.
And does that have any sort of implications for your resellers?
It has implications for our resellers in actually we're being asked more and more to provide those credentials, especially as part of the supply chain in the larger opportunities, especially if we've got resellers who are working in government contracts or any large tender environment now needs to have the element that is, what is the sustainability of your entire supply chain. So they want to know what we're doing, and they also want to know what our supply chain is doing. So we're working with our suppliers to be able to feed that in so that when it comes onto that tender submission, that at that point it's there and everyone can see what it is. People need to demonstrate it, rather than it just be words that, someone asks you, do you have a sustainability plan? And we go, yes. It needs to be more than that. It needs to be evidenced so that actually you can show the things that you're doing. So that's, why it's important to give it something that people can use.
And is there anything else you want to say to resellers about sort of Nimans going forward?
I would really encourage resellers to take a look at us. I think sometimes when you've been around for a long time, like we have, people sometimes think they know what we do and they pop us in a box that is Nimans does headsets, or Nimans does phone systems, or Nimans does this. Actually, I think it's important that they continue to take a look at us and come and see us and see what's there. It's a really exciting time for us. I think the acquisition by Midwich has inserted a new energy into us in terms of the growth that we're looking for, where we're looking to get to, and I think that's really important. So, as always, it's just an open invite. Come and see us.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for those insights.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's great to get an opportunity just to be able to talk about where we're going and what we're doing, and a chance to put that live across. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, and I hope you found that interesting. There's clearly a lot happening at Nimans and much to look forward to in 2024.